Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, SSIS Expert Series, Improve Your Data Quality and Prevent Fraud. This is Jimena Mejorado from Melissa Data. During today's webinar, our data quality analyst, Joseph Vertito, will show you how the data quality components for SSIS, specifically our Personator component, not only verifies your contact data, but also confirms that all data touchpoints belong to that one customer or organization. You'll also learn how to prevent fraud by identifying a user's geographical location using IP Locator, and how to add missing contact information to complete your records. But before we get started, I want to mention that we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I encourage you to submit your questions through the GoToMeeting interface. We'll get to as many questions as we can today. Any questions we don't have time to answer will be archived, and Joseph will be happy to answer offline following today's webinar. I will also send you a link to a recording of today's webinar via email, so you can follow up on anything you missed or pass the information along to colleagues. Okay, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our data quality analyst, Joseph Vertito.
Hello everyone, thank you Jimena. Again, my name is Joseph, and today we are going to talk about data verification, and specifically two of our components for SSIS, which is the Personator component as well as our IP Locator component. And these components actually give us the enrichment data that is necessary for us to be able to improve our confidence in our data, as well as ultimately help us in prevent suspicious activities and fraudulent activities. So I want to talk about what I refer to as a multi-domain association or verification, and really do emphasis on the difference between being able to verify contact data exclusively versus as a whole record. Because when we talk about contact information, you're talking about domains like email addresses, phone numbers, addresses, company names, and so on. And really, although each of these domains are exclusive of each other, they could actually be treated as a whole, and this is what an entire contact domain is. So how we kind of approach data quality traditionally, and I say traditionally because a lot of the companies out there now do some form of data quality, data cleansing, in order to verify their data. And we here at Melissa Data, we actually specialize in this, in data cleansing. And the traditional approach is to be able to just verify each piece of information individually. So if we've got a name, if we've got an address, a phone number, and an email, you probably want to know whether or not the name is actually, possibly suspicious or not, if the address is actually mailable, or the phone number is callable, email address deliverable, things like that. So each of these domains can be verified discretely and exclusively, but where it kind of becomes deceiving or lacking is because people can enter this information randomly. And what I mean by that is that, someone like myself could enter a completely valid name or a completely valid address and a callable phone number and a deliverable email, but we don't know for sure whether or not all of these pieces of information are actually tied to each other. And this is where we introduce the problem of verifying each piece of contact domain discretely. It is precisely the fact that we don't know whether or not this name is actually associated with this address, or whether Joseph actually owns this phone number and this email. Which is why we introduce a new type of technique, a new type of solution for being able to verify the contact domain comprehensively as a whole. Over time, Melissa Data has collected several data sources out there, and we've consolidated all of this data into a huge data set, which is then used by our Personator service, our Personator component for SSIS. And really what Personator allows us to do is that it leverages all of this wonderful data that has been consolidated, and from there be able to take that data quality concept of verification to the next level by being able to verify your contact domain as a whole. And what that means is that we are now able to tell you whether or not Joseph actually lives in this address and whether he has this phone number and this email address. And, you know, this is based off of a centric point of element. So we have to select whatever our point of centricity will be. In this case, we've got the address as our centric point of information, and from there we can validate all of the other information tied to that address or revolving around that address. So if we take a look at what some of the advantages are of being able to verify contact data as a whole, really, again, it takes contact verification to the next level. This is what we believe is the future when it comes to having good contact data quality. And, you know, we're not saying that we're trying to get rid of all the traditional methods for cleansing and regular expression, validation, and whatnot, because traditional techniques and methods can be used together with this multi-domain contact verification, so they can be used in tandem with each other. And also, ultimately, this increases our confidence in the data in order to prevent any form of fraudulent activity when people enter in their information, because we always want to be able to get the most accurate info, especially when it comes to our contacts. We want to make sure that if a person gives his contact, or when a company gives their contact, that all the pieces of information actually pertains to that individual record. So now I actually want to take you guys to a demo of the components. I'm going to open up my solution here, and I'm assuming that most of you are familiar with SQL Server Integration Services. For those of you who are not, it's, you know, quite simply put it, it's an ETL tool from Microsoft that allows you to do extracting data from different sources, doing some form of transformation to the data, and then loading it to the database destination of your choice. So in here, I've got a really simple package where I'm pulling out some data from a source. And if we open up this, or if we preview this source, you can see that I've got typical contact information. You've got full names, addresses, phone numbers, emails, city, state, and zip code. And I am passing this data through the Personator component. And if you look over here on the left, if you install the data quality components for SSIS, you get several different custom components that appear in your SSIS toolbar. And you can just drag and drop these components as you see fit. I do talk about all these components in my webinar series, in my expert series. This is actually the fourth part of the series, so if you're interested in seeing some of the functionality of these other components, you could view some of the past webinars that I've done and, you know, join the future webinars that I'm going to do. So you pass the data through, or you get your source, you pass it through the Personator component, which if we open up, gives you a nice graphical user interface where you what you have to do is you have to specify what your input domains are, and it allows you to input all sorts of contact information, which you know, you can have your names, your phone numbers, your emails, as well as the address. And from there, pretty much you decide all of the actions and options that you want to do. I'm not going to go through in detail through all of these. I do talk about this in detail in my past webinars, but basically you set up your inputs, and right now we're doing what we call the verify action, and this action allows us to verify the data as a whole. This is where we're going to get the metadata about our contact information as whether or not, you know, all the pieces actually tie to each other. So getting the data and passing it through the Personator component to do the verification, and I'm doing a few more logic here where I split the verified information and then I append a definition to it. Nothing special really, but if we run this package, this solution, I want to show you what we get back. So what's happening here is it's getting the data and it's passing it through a web service. Personator is a web service. Although this is a local component, it calls our web service, so it sends the data through our servers for verification. And then what you get back is this data. So we've got all of our original information over here, all our original contacts. And from there, we are able to determine which of the records were verified and which of the records were not. So here in the results description, you can see we've got 3 records at the top that did not verify, while the rest of the records tell me that either the name or the phone were actually verified to the address. So this we can consider as good information, as reliable information, whereas these 3 might be fraudulent for some reason. We can see here the first record, the phone number doesn't look too, it looks suspicious to me, which is why it didn't verify. This third record, if we look at it, we can see that it only had a first name. It didn't have the first and last name, which again, it can flag as suspicious, and it did not verify. But if we take a look at this second record here, it tells me that this record did not verify either, although it has a phone number that looks good, an address that might look good also, and then a name that looks completely valid. And this is again where I'm trying to make the point where data can be deceiving. You know, each piece of information can be good. It might look good to us even. And if you run it through your data quality regimens, through your data verification procedures, it will tell you that this address is actually valid and there's nothing suspicious about this name. But in fact, if you run it through our Personator service, we can tell you for sure, using our data sources, that Karen doesn't actually live in this address and that she probably doesn't have this phone number either. So quite simply, this is how one of the features that you can get from the Personator component, and really the verification part allows us to, again, take our data to that next level as far as verification is concerned. If you want to know a little bit more about what this Personator component can do, it actually does a bunch of other things, like it actually cleanses your data. It's able to cleanse your data, standardize it, format it according to the industry standards. It can also do your moves. So if you've got a move address for as a person, we'll give you the latest move address for that individual. And it also does append, which allows you to, say, for example, you've got a name and an address and you're missing their phone number, we can actually append their latest phone number for you or even their email address. So these are the capabilities of our Personator component. So going back, I also want to introduce to you guys a brand new component of ours, which is going to be released in this upcoming version of our data quality components for SSIS. And this is what we call our IP locator component. And to put it quite simply, the IP locator component gives us enrichment information about IP addresses. Specifically, we've got metadata that, for the internet service providers as well as the domain. We can tell you what country, city, state, and zip code that an IP address comes from, as well as the latitude and longitude if we want to be able to physically see that on a map. And this, being able to get this enrichment information, this metadata from the IP locator solution, we're able to do things like being able to do targeted marketing for specific areas or specific demographics. So if we want to be able to do only specific locations, specific areas, we could do so and do targeted marketing for those audience. And then we can also do research and analysis on location trends in our website traffic. So we can kind of keep track of all the traffic that we're getting in our website, store the IP addresses, and from there we could kind of do our trends and research for what kind of traffic goes through our website, what locations or you know, what specific locations do we get most traffic on, and which areas do we need to work on, things like that. But more importantly, with the IP locator solution, we could do filtering for specific areas, specifically when there are some high-risk areas or some countries that we specifically don't want to cater to or we want to filter out. And this is something that the IP locator solution allows us to do because of all the metadata that we're getting back. So if we take a look at the demo of our IP locator solution, going back to the Visual Studio here, again, we've got as part of the data quality component suite, the IP locator component, which is installed over here. And if you wanted to use that, you just drag and drop it to your data flow. We've got a flat file source, which has IP addresses. We've got a bunch of IP addresses, and we want to know if these IP addresses are, where these IP addresses come from, where they're located. So we pass it through the IP locator component. And the way you set up these components is that, again, you set your inputs and you specify what you want for your output. So over here, I'm passing it the IP address field, and I'm telling it to give me back all of these wonderful metadata, such as the domain, the internet service provider, the zip code, country, latitude, longitude, and so on. And if we ran this package here, so again, it's getting the data, it's passing it through the IP locator database, IP locator component, and then gives us all this wonderful information back. So we've got the original IP addresses, and from there we are able to tell. Right here, I'm doing a filter for US IPs only. So what I've done is I've flagged all of the IP addresses that are marked as US, and flagged the rest of these countries that are not in the US. So we've got countries like France, Brazil, and so on and so forth. Stop project. And again, it's a really simple solution, but from here we can see, some of the simple things we can do with it to prevent some sort of, fraudulent activity. And I've experienced this, especially through our things like web forms, for example, public web forms. And this happens a lot even in our website here at Melissa Data. We've got people signing up from different countries, and sometimes they're just spam. You don't even know if they're valid or not. But most of the time, they're probably not going to be valid in the case for our sign-up sheet, because we have an MVP program, which I'll talk about later on. But we get all sorts of spam all the time, and one of the techniques that you could make use of in order to prevent all of this unwanted information and fraudulent activity is to use the IP locator and filter out all of the unwanted countries that you think you're not going to be working with as far as being able to provide your services and your products. And with that, go back here. And finally, just to recap some of the things we've talked about, and I know this is a really short webinar, but the concepts here are quite simple. But we've seen how traditional data cleansing and verification is done at the individual level or at the discrete level. Being able to verify each of the domains separately is really a good thing. But we want to be able to take that a step further by doing multi-domain verification. And this really gives us much, much better data quality, much more confidence in our data, and prevent, otherwise fraudulent activity that we would not have caught before by using traditional methods. We've also seen IP locator and the types of metadata enrichment information we get out of that, and some of the techniques we can make use of to filter out specific areas. And also, we've seen a demo of the Personator and IP locator component in SQL Server Integration Services. And these are really easy to use tools where you just drag and drop it through the Visual Studio environment and set everything up through a GUI. So we made everything simple and easy for you to do. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this short webinar. Please do ask about our MVP program. For those of you who are community leaders or speakers, or if you like to engage in discussions on data quality or even just data in general, we have an MVP program. So I'd like to develop a relationship with you guys, be able to include you in our network of MVPs. So send me an email about that. I have my email on the screen or my phone number. You can give me a call anytime, and we'll talk about some of the opportunities that are included in the MVP program. If you want to view our past webinars, you can just click here, and that will take you to our the previous webinars that we've done, as well as all the other webinars that we've done here at Melissa Data. And last but certainly not the least, if you want to download the components, you could just click here. We will send the presentation afterwards, so you could click here, download the components. And one thing I do want to expand on is that we have a community edition mode. So this community edition mode for the data quality components, it's not something you have to pay for, so you can certainly make use of some of the functionality available in our SSIS components through the community edition mode. Things like parsing, formatting, standardization, things like that we give away for free. So check it out, download the tools, contact me for any question or for the MVP program and whatnot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. The floor is now open for questions. If you have any questions, please type them in right now. And while you type those in, I just want to remind you that I will be sending out a link to a recording of today's webinar. You should expect to receive it via email by the end of the week. Okay, so we got our first questions. Can these solutions be done in real time?
Yes, these solutions can be done in real time. Although we're doing the solution, or I showed the solution in SQL Server Integration Services, there are ways you could process data in real time, not just through a batch. Of course, for those of you who know about SQL Server, SSIS, the DTSX package can always be called in other ways. So you could use that input, that output in real time by calling the DTSX packages, or alternatively, if you have programmers in your companies, you can actually consume the APIs or the web services for both of these. So Personator will have a web service, the IP Locator will also have a web service, and also a local API. So you could call those if you want to integrate that in your website. If you want to do real-time verification, contact verification through maybe your website or your forms or your CRM solution.
Does Personator work internationally? If so, to what accuracy?
We do have global solutions, which is, we actually have, if you look at let's go back in here. If you look at the components, we have a global verify solution. So what we're able to provide right now globally is being able to verify the addresses, at a global scale. And we also will have solutions for global phone number verification, of course, email addresses, which is already a global solution. But right now, Global Verify will allow you to verify addresses, phone numbers, emails discretely. So it's not going to do the same thing as what Personator is doing, which is associating the name to an address to a phone number. It currently does not do that because it is a solution for the U.S. only. And the reason for that is because, it's a lot of data. And even right now, we are still perfecting this data for the U.S. So, but one of our goals really is to be able to be a global company. So we're trying to globalize all of our solutions. So maybe eventually, but not as of right now for the verification part.
What performance is like for data set of 100,000 records?
100,000 records we consider as not really that big. So it's not going to take long at all for 100,000 records. I don't have exact numbers with me, but each record running through Personator should run in a sub-second. So maybe between an hour or two for 100,000 records, but it shouldn't be that long. It's not going to take more than a day or anything. Yeah.
So it looks like that's all the questions that we have. If you think of any additional questions, feel free to contact Joseph by email or phone. We'll put his info up on the screen again, just so you can take his info down. And I just want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.